Association. I couldn't be luckier to have the kind of people that work so hard, that are so free of agendas, and are just student-driven in their task, and I really appreciate them very, very much. The communication, again, the EdNet's budget, it is paramount that the middle school increases its teaching staff and instructional space. I would also comment, and I know this is difficult as well, but we are really starting to suffer with used furniture that can no longer be repaired. I can't even throw out broken furniture any longer. In fact, we normally have a dumpster out there to kind of get rid of stuff that's broken, and we did not even order that this year. In fact, I'm going to be looking to find out if John can come up with some used furniture that he's got stored away, maybe about a dozen or so, because we're going to go probably from 640 to 650 plus, depending on who moves in and moves out. And I have no additional furniture right now. Facilities. Now, I could have said more about the secondary building, but I think a lot of this is still up in the air and in terms of direction, and I didn't want to frustrate myself or you. It's kind of like picking up a daisy. She loves me, she loves me not, she loves me. And in some ways it actually depends on which meeting you go to, that you are looking at the different options. There's a number of options, and that particular area is something that seems to be fluctuating with the middle school. I've already mentioned the classroom space, antiquated septic system, continued asbestos removal, and I think I left out asbestos removal from your sheet. I added it and updated it to continued mildew control. We have dehumidifiers in this building that are on 24/7 to maintain that healthy environment. The superintendent also asked me to share with you, based on our school safety and at-risk programs, some of the things that we're doing at the middle school. We continue to, I've talked about Red Ribbon before, where we dedicate a week of drug instruction that actually is instruction that comes from our students, specifically our student council. The Center on Media and Child Health presentation held in February for our 6th and 7th. This was sponsored by Children's Hospital of Boston. It was a real eye-opener to the kids. And we often think about the pressure that the young ladies have with all the Hollywood stuff. But it was quite an eye-opener to see what is going on with guys. And to look at Hank Aaron, who just in a very, very natural way blistered record after record, and to have Barry Bonds right next to him, who also was blistering records, but who did it the fair way, the right way, the way with integrity, who did it legally. And then they started seeing that a lot of this stuff that they see in magazines is actually choreographed through photography. Noses are fixed. Tummies that might be out a little bit, those are brought in through photography, and pretty soon you have an imperfect person who looks just absolutely stellar, so you can use the word star. And I think it was a great eye-opener for the boys to realize that they can feel pretty good about themselves as they are, and they really may not have to project themselves into that sports image or that TV star. I think it made quite an impact. The MAD presentation, which was a multimedia presentation, this just, I'd have to say emotionally, you looked around the room and there was barely a dry eye. And when you see 8th grade boys looking around and trying to do that quickly so no one sees them, you know it got through, because this talked about the consequences of poor choices. Good kids who make poor choices, sometimes the story is worse than sad. And the adults and the kids that were in this room just shared a very special moment, but I think it really grabbed at the kids' hearts. In April, we also had Bill Ross came in and talked about bullying and some of the difficulties that he suffered as a youngster and how he was able to pull himself out of some very, very difficult times. Shared programs that were partnered by the police and the schools. I'm sure you remember Nora Mann and the internet safety, which was absolutely excellent. That was over at the high school. There were a series of Citizen Drug Recognition Academy, a series of academies that were here at the middle school. Marilyn Belmonte was just, if I use the word awesome, that would not describe the kind of instructor and the information that she shared with staff and parents. The enrichment that you see on this paper is the result of actually a lot of hard work by our parent association, but the chairman of our enrichment committee is Sharon Kelleher, and I'd like to thank her publicly for all of her hard work on behalf of the middle school this year.
Just a quick comment. I think that the changes that we started this year are moving us in the right direction. I think we have ways to go, both in terms of the program we've put in place and providing more staff and the required space for that. I can speak personally, over the last 3 years, my daughter has graduated from the middle school this year, and in terms of culture and environment, I saw improvement as she went along, and I think it was a good culture. I think the communication is A+. It's the best communicating school in the district from what I've seen. I was never caught by surprise because I always had an email before something happened, and that's the way I like to work, and that was really good. So overall, and you know, I think in the curriculum areas, I saw one of your goals, which you didn't touch on, which was to put pre-algebra, get a pre-algebra program in the 7th grade. I strongly urge that. I think the committee strongly urges that.
We're hoping to move forward on that.
So I think in general we're moving in the right direction.
I think it's worth pointing out that this committee has given some direction to the secondary school building committee, and the plan that is being moved forward right now calls for the development of the new high school, which will include some core facilities. But this committee also insisted that the first phase include at least some retrofitting of the middle school at the same time, so that the middle school won't simply be waiting forever.
Well, that's good. We're grateful for the boiler. We're grateful for the lights in the gymnasium. But you also have to realize I have a school council that is very, very passionate about, and the question comes up. So, what's going to happen to the middle school? And I think it's a fair question, and it's more easily answered some days than others. But I appreciate that.
I do think one thing to remember is that, you know, if we go forward with our plan, which was endorsed by the school committee, and depending on whatever the timeline is, and if the town approves that plan and we get the funding, even though it would be a new high school with a core facility, that would significantly add to the middle school experience, because those students would have access to new gymnasiums, auditoriums, media centers / libraries, cafeterias. So, you know, you could think of it as this would be the home base for the kids, but they'd be spending a lot of time with a lot of new facilities in a new area if everything, you know, comes to fruition. So
I would say when you're putting the budget together, emphasize the furniture, because I know that concerns,
Yes.
especially.
That won't wait for the budget. You need furniture this summer, right?
Well, presently I do not have enough furniture to house the students that are coming here. I'm probably about a dozen chair desk units short. I think we can make it, and I'm hoping, John seems to think that they have a little stored area that, but he's got to take care of his inventory first before he commits.
Right.
I wonder, maybe there's some use for furniture coming from the old battery.
Yeah, except they're bigger. Instead of
Yeah.
I know, but
But
the 6th graders aren't much bigger than the 5th graders.
We can be creative.
we're putting a long-term budget together, so we'll be interested in the capital needs as
Yep.
well as your staffing needs. And you're gonna find yourself in that quandary, should I restrain from asking for this item because it's gonna be part of a building project? Or should I submit it? And I would encourage you to submit it. And, because if it's a need, we can't continue to put things off for a project down the road. So I would encourage you to submit it in what you think you would need in the next 3 months. And as far as curriculum goes, I'm sure that you've heard through your administrative team, our concerns with the math and the foreign language
Yep.
program. I think that, Jim Bowden, outlined a course of action, which we're waiting to see how that works. And I'm interested to hear your report on the G block, specifically for the
Yep.
8th graders, and how you want to tweak that program.
Yep.
You've undergone a lot of change in the last couple of years, and you could see that it's in process. And I'm pleased that you're on top of it, and the finished product is out there.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get there.
All right. Thank you for your support.
Move to approve the middle school improvement plan.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Thank you, folks.
See you
Very
later.
much.
Last. See you later.
And now we can ask Joan Bernard to come back.
Yes.
Mary Hill. That's a favorite topic. Yes. That's the version they want.
Part of this.
These are the changes, right?
Some of these are outright policies, and some of these are for the handbook.
Okay. John, why don't you walk us through the
Okay,
change?
I'm not sure the order that you have, so
Okay.
I may go in a different order, but essentially, what I'm asking for is the committee's endorsement of some language in the handbook that addresses, that substitutes the existing policy that is established by the MIAA for alcohol use by a student athlete, and then extend, my request is to extend the penalty period for that. That's the one that's headlined item D, interscholastic athletic eligibility rules. And
It's-
that's the 3-page one.
It's in the back here.
It's got a little bit on the third
Yep.
page. Essentially, in that one, the introductory paragraph is language I'm proposing, where it starts rule number 62.1. From that point, all the way through the second page, and then the third page, with the exception of the last paragraph. That's all MIAA language exactly out of their blue, what they refer to as their blue book, which is their handbook. So the first and last paragraphs of all of that is language I'm asking you to adopt. And then similarly, the one that's item 9, it's a Roman numeral 9. These numbers, they don't mean anything necessarily on the pages I've given to you, but they mean something as to where they would be placed in the existing handbook, okay? So that's why they look a little, some of them look a little bit different. Similarly, the rules for participation in an extracurricular activity, I'm asking to invoke a penalty for a student who may be involved in one or more extracurricular activities and may unfortunately use or possess alcohol during the time of school, would be subject to a penalty as outlined in items A, B, and C. So those two, I think, kind of go together. And then the others are extending the language that, when I met last week with Dr. Troughton and Mr. Jervey and Mrs. Davis in a policy subcommittee meeting, we took the language that you folks have in your policy manual for early graduation, and I added an introductory statement to that about the submission of a plan to do that if a student is looking to apply for consideration for early graduation, as we did have one example of with this last class. I think you all know that. The next one that I have in my packet is headline P. This is the grading, weighted grade point average and class rank. The next one is item D on outside courses. I think it ties into the whole issue of the weighted grade point average and the types of courses that might a student might have as